So welcome, Andrew. I so appreciate your consistent leadership and all the work that you do for so many. And as always at SETC, we begin all things by acknowledging our creator. We acknowledge all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Andrew, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Thank you very much, Victor. It's a pleasure to be here with you virtually in this space, and thank you for opening with that powerful acknowledgement as well. My name is Andrew Reddin. I'm the CEO of the Child Development Institute. We're a multi-service organization that provides children, youth, and families, primarily within Toronto, with early years and childcare services, mental health, and family violence services. So we really aim to support the whole child. And while we have direct services within Toronto, we also have some programs that we've scaled through a model where we empower and train and equip other organizations to deliver some evidence-based programs of ours, like our SNAP and Mothers in Mind programs that have a national and international presence. So it's really, I found it to be very exciting and meaningful work. I'm actually relatively new to CDI. Before joining, I worked in employment and skills training for about 17 years. So I'm newer to the child and youth mental health space directly, but when I used to work in employment services, many of the young people whom we served who faced systemic intersectional challenges to finding meaningful employment also grappled with significant mental health challenges. And I often, when connecting with those young folks, had the chance to reflect that if those young people had had access to meaningful, inclusive services 5, 10, 15 years before coming to our doors, what a difference it would have already made in their lives. And so that's really what inspired me to transition to this sector. And I started with CDI last March. So it's been about 10 months now.
That's incredible. Very familiar with your remarkable work at CDI. I remember I thought it was a brilliant model, SNAP, Stop Now and Plan. And I was colleagues with Tony was the former CEO, right? Tony Dins.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
knew
Yeah.
Tony very well. Yeah, so remarkable work. And once again, congratulations on this new role. Very
Thank
impressive
you.
background. And once again, we appreciate all that you're doing for so many. So my next question is, what inspires you most about your current work? What has you curious?
That's a great question. I think what we're really working on at CDI is how do we make a greater impact in terms of addressing just the extent of unmet need in our communities. So, and we have been able to, fortunately, more than double the number of unique clients whom we've served over the past year. That's been in part through securing additional funding, but also really looking at how we improve our services, how we reduce barriers to clients accessing services, and how we continue innovating our programs and services so we can reach as many children, youth, and families as we can. That's what we're really driven by because unfortunately, in Ontario, for example, we know that 1 in 5 children will experience a significant mental health challenge, but 5 out of those 6 children will not receive the support that they need, which is a really staggering statistic. It's those types of data points shared by partners like Children's Mental Health Ontario really illuminate the extent of the need in our communities. And one other really connected to that is looking at how do we close the gaps in access and outcomes for equity deserving communities. And this is where we're really increasingly eager to collaborate with our sector partners. So, for example, working with our lead agency in the Toronto child and youth mental health sector, Strides Toronto, contributing to their dismantling anti-Black racism strategy, we're looking at how do we begin measuring and reporting on disaggregated outcomes. So looking at outcomes, specifically for Black clients, looking at where are there gaps around health outcomes to really help inform, and then working with Black-led organizations. How do we co-create, co-design approaches to service that are more inclusive, that reduce systemic barriers, that help close disparities in outcomes? And similarly, wanting to work more with our Indigenous-led partners to help advance commitments to truth and reconciliation, also being able to leverage measurement. Like, this is where I think also we're really inspired by, how do we close these gaps in terms of even collecting data that demonstrate the extent of these disparities, because unfortunately, our sector hasn't always done a great job of collecting data. And if we don't collect the data on what people are experiencing, the systemic barriers, the lived experience, the intersectionality of issues around access and outcomes, how do we make systemic change? So there's a lot that we're aiming to make a greater impact on around helping as many children, youth, and families as we can, and in doing so, really working with partners to close the gap around disparities that equity-deserving communities face.
I couldn't agree more. The ability to collect high quality disaggregated demographic data in certain ecosystems is so important right now, more than ever, especially what it looks like in terms of how the data is collected, stewarded, analyzed, governed, and disseminated. So yes, so I appreciate your leadership and the work that you're doing in this space. My next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges?
That's a great question. Well, I think definitely the gap in data is something that we're really looking to help address with our partners. But also, I think in terms of other gaps, one is certainly around talent and around staffing. Just the staffing shortage that is impacting the nonprofit sector overall, but certainly the specific areas that CDI works in. So childcare and early years services, community-based mental health programs. And we also know that there are structural systemic issues at play there. So for example, last summer when CDI submitted our pre-budget submission to the government of Canada, we really advocated for and joined our sector partners in advocating for higher compensation, more professional development opportunities for our early years and childcare professionals, and also working to lend our voice through other forums for more competitive compensation and investment in community-based mental health professionals as well. Because without being, I mean, ultimately there's the ethical imperative, which is first and foremost around really ensuring that folks are receiving compensation for their work, and also for us to be able to compete with other sectors as well. Even though CDI, according to some recent sector data around compensation levels, we're a relatively competitive employer in our space. We're still competing with the private sector and hospitals and other employers, and so how do we ensure that folks who are doing such important, meaningful frontline work in community are being compensated fairly and competitively? So that continues to be a big advocacy piece for us. And certainly, I think one of the challenges that our sector faces in terms of attracting enough folks to work in this sector and then retaining them. So that's really top of mind for us. And also that kind of connects to what we were chatting about earlier, just around the extent of the unmet need. Because if we can't fill these critical roles, how do we meet this increasing need in the community?
I couldn't agree more. We just had a conversation with our colleague, Dan Clement, the CEO of United Way, and the sector definitely needs a lot of support in terms of just infrastructure and ensuring that we can attract and retain talent to ensure that essential services are met, but not only that, scale and innovation can occur. So I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your candor. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work?
That's a great question. Well, I think Definitely what informs everything for us at CDI are our core commitments to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're just actually completing our new 5-year strategic plan. So we're excited to be able to share that with our community partners and stakeholders in the spring, and really looking at, how do we continue to advance our work in partnership with equity deserving communities, to really, again, really close gaps in terms of outcomes and access, and really ensuring that our organization is increasingly reflective of the communities whom we serve. Something else that's also a really key strategic priority for us, which also relates to really supporting the whole child, is even building bridges or more of a continuum of care within the services CDI offers. So we're unique in a way that, because we're a multi-service organization, we have our childcare centers, our early learning centers. We also have really robust mental health services, including for young children under the age of 6. So how do those services intersect so that it really is providing very young children with more wraparound support and more outcome-focused mental health services at the outset? Because unfortunately, one of the other developments that we're seeing in our community is that post-COVID onset, very young kids, like 18 months, are coming to our centers with significant challenges. Our challenges around attachment, around behavior, coming to us in significant emotional distress. In some cases, our staff have said they've seen a 40% increase in very young children coming to our centers with those concerns. So how do we make the most of the resources we have and the expertise to really support the whole child, providing childcare as well as mental health supports at the same time? So we have some, I think, exciting and promising ideas that our very dedicated teams are working on, and which also helps, I think, just foster more internal collaboration between our teams, really for the benefit of the child and the family.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like to you and your colleagues?
That's a great question. I think ultimately, if we could really meet the unmet need, if we could see those really disturbing statistics change, where rather than only 1 in 6 children in Ontario receiving meaningful care, all children in Ontario could, all children across Canada. I mean, that's the ultimate vision. And for us not to have wait lists for our programs, and also to ensure that we have equitable access to our programs, that folks coming from very diverse backgrounds, from diverse communities, are receiving the same quality of care, gaining the same benefits, the same outcomes across our systems. So I think that's the ultimate vision we're striving for, is that that all children, youth, and families in our communities have access to equitable, meaningful, outcomes-based care. And while there's a lot of work ahead of us, I also feel optimistic. Although there is this extent of unmet need, people in our communities are doing really amazing things. We are very fortunate at CDI to be part of a huge network of folks who, I think, even in this climate where there are gaps in resources, where under other circumstances, or perhaps in years past, there might have been a bit of more of a competitive or maybe territorial approach. I think there is, a lot of really great mission-driven organizations who do want to come together and know that we'll achieve greater impact together if we do figure out how to join forces. And part of that is also, of course, collecting that data that we need to tell our story and be able to move the needle on advocacy and secure the sustainable funding that we need to take this work to the next level. So yes, there is a lot of work ahead of us. There are challenges, but I think I'm really inspired by this community of folks who I get to work with, both within CDI, among our community partners, and there are already promising signs that we're making a meaningful, tangible difference.
That's remarkable. And just like us at Setsi, data is a love language. So I so appreciate all those sentiments. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
That's a great question. I would say I would encourage everyone in their communities to let their elected officials know how important it is to invest in kids, particularly kids who face intersectional barriers, who face challenges to access the services that they need. So just it should be, something that decision makers instinctively understand, but we really have to keep reminding those decision makers just about the lifelong meaningful impact of investing in children. So we just encourage folks in our communities to continue raising their voices, calling for that investment, calling for that equitable access. And also, if a family that you're connected with, if you're a child, if you're a youth yourself, if you need support, please call us anytime at 416-603-1827. We are here. So those would be my calls to action.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for your consistent leadership, your solidarity, and all the work that you do for so many. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation, and we acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Andrew. I so appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor.